Every single king and queen who has attended the Revery for over 800 years has walked into a throne room within Pangaea Castle and sworn the same oath. They have pledged to never take the empty throne for themselves, because its vacancy is supposed to represent the collective peace and equality of all nations. Every single monarch has walked away from the throne believing the lie, because the throne was never empty. Hidden behind centuries of deception is a figure so powerful that even the Gorosei kneel in absolute submission before them. Their name is Imu, the one who is sat upon the empty throne, and they may well be the most terrifying character that Oda has ever created. Every major conflict, political upheaval, or even genocide that was dressed up as governance traces back to this one figure, and the decisions that they made within the Room of Flowers. The pirates who are chasing freedom, the marines who are enforcing their version of justice, along with the revolutionaries who are attempting to tear the system down, none of them fully understand the scope of what they are fighting against until very recently in the story. And even we as readers didn't know about the existence of Imu. In this video, I'll be breaking down absolutely everything that we know about Imu so far, including their origins, abilities, relationships, and their grudges. So without further delay, here is my complete retrospective of Imu. Now, they first appear during the Revery arc, and the way that Oda introduces them is incredible. While the world leaders are gathering at Merijo in order to discuss global affairs, believing that they're participating in real governance, their actual decision maker is somewhere deep beneath Pangaea Castle, visiting a frozen underground chamber. Inside that chamber is a giant straw hat. We still don't know the full story behind that hat. We don't even know whose it was or why Imu keeps it preserved within ice. Some have theorized that it could potentially be the straw hat of Joy Boy, but the visual of this strange figure alongside this frozen straw hat is enough to make us rethink our predictions for the future of the series. After visiting this chamber, Imu retreats to the Room of Flowers and starts reviewing wanted posters like a shopping list. Luffy and Blackbeard's posters are shredded. Shirahoshi's photograph is stabbed with a single deliberate wound. And then there's a photograph of Vivi, which Imu holds carefully, completely undamaged. Luffy and Blackbeard are carriers of D, who've grown beyond what Imu considers manageable. Shirahoshi is Poseidon, an ancient weapon that requires monitoring rather than immediate destruction. And when it comes to Vivi, Imu wants Vivi for reasons that we still haven't been given a full answer to, but the fact that the ruler of the world is personally interested in a princess from Alabasta is deeply unsettling. When the Gorosei arrive to speak with Imu, they kneel before them. These are the people that the entire world considers the highest authority in the world government. The fleet admirals answer to them, along with Cypherpol operating under their direct command. So it's shocking that the Gorosei are on their knees asking Imu to identify which light needs to be extinguished from history. Who exactly is Imu? The clear answer is that we still don't know for certain, but the evidence is mounting fast. Imu has only ever been shown as a silhouette. Their gender hasn't even been confirmed. They possess a humanoid figure roughly the size of a normal person. They also possess sharp almond-shaped eyes with red irises and thin rings around each pupil. The eyes of Imu look predatory and ancient, and they don't resemble anything that we've seen from a standard human within the series. People have drawn parallels between the eyes of Mihawk and Zunisha, who are the only ones that permanently have ringed eye structures. Imu's clothing consists of a crown with 4 towering spikes and an incredibly long robe that trails behind them across the floor. In the anime, their voice carries a distorted echo. Everything about their presentation screams that Imu is something fundamentally different. Ivankov was the first to put the theory together after Sabo reported what he had seen. Ivankov speculated that Imu could be Nirona Imu, the original member of the first 20 who founded the world government 800 years ago. The reasoning is straightforward. A normal celestial dragon has no authority to command the 5 elders. The only logical reason why every world noble would submit to a single figure is if that figure was one of the original founders, someone whose claim to power predates over every other family's. Marcus Mars even referred to Imu as a creator, the exact same title given to the first 20. And then you have the personal knowledge. Imu knows details about the Void Century that that go far beyond historical records. They personally recognize Joy Boy's haki signature. They're intimately familiar with Nefertari D. Lily's actions during that era. They know who Davy D. Jones was and what his promise meant. All of this points to someone who lived through the most important events in the history of One Piece. A theory that a lot of people subscribe to is that Imu has achieved immortality via the Opi Opi no Mi's perennial youth operation. If true, then it means that at some point during or after the Void Century, a previous user of Law's Devil Fruit sacrificed their life in order to grant Imu eternal youth. That one act would explain everything: their sustained existence, the accumulated knowledge spanning 8 centuries, and the absolute authority that Imu has over the world nobles. And it makes sense why these very nobles revere Imu as a living god, because in their eyes, Imu literally is a god. Imu uses a unique first-person pronoun called Mu, seemingly derived from their own name. Also, they speak with archaic second-person pronouns, which feel deliberately otherworldly. They view the entire world as their personal possession, and they've stated outright that it's still incomplete. What that completeness looks like and what's required to achieve it remains one of the biggest unanswered questions in the series, but we know that the extermination of the Davy family bloodline has been an obsessive priority for Imu for over 800 years, as has the suppression of everything connected to the will of D and the legacy of Joy Boy. Most of the time, Imu presents themselves as being very calm. When they're not on the empty throne, they're usually found in the Room of Flowers, sitting still, handling butterflies, and attended by Gunko, who is one of the members of the God Knights who has served as Imu's personal attendant for 6 decades and is regularly by their side. There's an eerie stillness to Imu. Even when they are in conversation with people who are not world nobles, they tend to maintain a surface level of politeness. Imu doesn't throw petty insults at their subordinates, and they don't seem to rage at every minor setback. They had a perfectly cordial exchange with the Knights, Sommers, and Killingham on Elbaf, answering their questions calmly. They just give orders and expect obedience. When you dig under that composure, you learn that it's a mask, and it cracks the moment that Imu is confronted with the past. When Cobra confirmed that Lily carried the D initial, Imu's response was immediate and violent. When Rox taunted Imu about Davy Jones being the true king of the world at God Valley, Imu lost that composure completely and angrily denied it. These are 800-year-old wounds that appear to still be fresh. Imu has confirmed a lot of our theories about the concept of inherited will within One Piece, as when they look at individuals who are living in the present, they see echoes of the past. When they look at Luffy, they see Joy Boy. When they look at Rox, they see Davy Jones. The past and the present are the same war to Imu, fought by the same enemies wearing different faces. One of the biggest scenes involving Imu happened during the recent Revery, when King Cobra of Arabasta requests an audience with the 5 elders. Cobra wants answers about his ancestor, Queen Nefertari Lily, who was one of the first 20 but mysteriously vanished before she could return to Arabasta after the Void Century. He also wants to know about the initial deed that appears in a letter that Lily wrote. It's a letter that has been passed down through the Nefertari family for 800 years. Imu listens to this conversation from the Room of Flowers via a Dendenmushi, and when they hear enough, they do something extraordinary. They walk directly into the empty throne room and sit on the throne in front of Cobra and the 5 elders. The elders are visibly shocked that Imu is revealing themselves. This isn't normal. Anyone outside of Imu's inner circle who learns of the Supreme Leader's existence is pretty much sentenced to death and erased from history. But Imu wants to control this conversation personally. Imu refuses to answer questions about their own identity. They acknowledge the D but dismiss it as nothing but a faint echo, claiming that modern carriers of the initial don't even know what it means. According to Imu, D was the moniker of an ancient enemy, people who opposed the first 20 during the Void Century. And then Imu drops the bombshell about Lily. They reveal that Lily's actions directly caused the poneglyphs to be scattered across the world, and Imu considers this the worst possible outcome for the world government. The question that they pose is whether if Lily's great mistake was genuine or intentional. It suggests that they've been agonizing over this for 800 years. Imu was visibly shaking with anger while recounting this affair. In exchange for these answers, Imu demands one thing: the full name signed on Lily's letter. Cobra knows he's going to die regardless, as the elders have already drawn their weapons. So he speaks the truth. He says Nefertari D. Lily. The moment Imu hears that the Nefertari family carries the D, they strike Cobra down with a demonic tail. Sabo intervenes, attacking with his Mera Mera no Mi, but Imu just eats his fire, literally consuming it. Sabo grabs Cobra and tries to run, as Imu and the 5 elders transform into monstrous forms and pursue them through the castle. Cobra makes the decision to sacrifice himself so that Sabo can escape, standing in front of the monsters and reciting Lily's final words. The poneglyphs must be protected, bear the flag of the dawn against the world. His voice is partially drowned out by Imu's roars, and then Cobra is murdered. Sabo escapes with the knowledge of Imu's existence, becoming only the second known person in history to directly encounter Imu and survive, the first being Roxy Zebek. Wapol also witnessed the whole thing through a peephole in the wall, and he too ran for his life. After the Revery, Imu contacts the elders with a request. They want to test out Vegapunk's latest creation, the Mother Flame. This technology was stolen and delivered to the world government by Vegapunk's traitorous satellite York. When the elders ask where to use it, Imu names the Lulusia kingdom, purely because of its proximity to Merijo. The timing works out horrifically well for the world government because Sabo's location is traced to Lulusia after the Marines intercept a call where he's trying to tell the Revolutionary Army about Imu. The elders remark that Sabo is unlucky, as they instruct the Marines to act as though they had not intercepted any transmission and that Lulusia had never existed to begin with. And then as Sabo is mid-sentence speaking to Dragon that the empty throne has an occupant, the citizens of Lulusia look up and see a massive object descending through the clouds. A rain of energy beams fires from the sky and the kingdom is annihilated within seconds. Nothing remains, there's no island left, just like God Valley. Following this, sea levels across the world rose by 1 meter. Vegapunk later theorized that the weapon responsible is one of the ancient weapons, dormant for centuries until the Mother Flame gave it the power source that it needed. He connected it to the Void Century itself. During the Great War 800 years ago, the use of the 3 ancient weapons caused sea levels to rise by 200 meters, transforming a world of large continents into the scattered islands that define the modern geography of One Piece. This now brings us to Imu's combat abilities, which are frankly absurd. As the God Valley and Elbaf sections of this video will demonstrate, Imu has tanked simultaneous attacks from the strongest combatants in history and has regenerated themselves without a scratch. Imu's transformation is the most overtly evil thing Oda has ever drawn. When Imu revealed their combat form against Sabo, they became what can only be described as the literal devil, as we see massive bat-like wings, a pointed tail capable of piercing Logia users, and a long pitchfork trident. The transformation was so large that it rivaled the platform beneath the empty throne itself, with the size being roughly equivalent to the 5 elders' massive mythical zone beast forms in scale. The visual parallels to Satan are deliberate. Oda is positioning Imu as the ultimate antagonist to Luffy's godlike Nika form, liberation versus oppression. Beyond the transformation, Imu possesses a terrifying mastery over the abyss, a magical teleportation system that their subordinates use. While the 5 elders and god knights can only summon basic teleportation circles on the ground, Imu creates circles of varying sizes both on the ground and suspended in mid-air, using them to manifest weapons instantaneously. They can summon a levitating grimoire, a demonic book with a pentagram on its cover, and from its pages materialize dark-colored weapons capable of severely injuring giants. Imu wields both Supreme King Haki and Observation Haki at extraordinary levels. Their Conqueror's blasts can incapacitate entire armies, and their observation has tracked fleeing targets across an active battlefield. Imu's regenerative immortality surpasses even the 5 elders, so conventional attacks, even Haki-infused ones from top-tier fighters, simply don't stick to Imu. Whatever the source of this immortality, whether if it's the Opi Opi no Mi's perennial youth operation or something else in entirely, it makes Imu functionally unkillable by normal means. But it's not absolute. Supreme King Haki is the key to attacking Imu, and the story has already shown us exactly how it works against the Covenant system. The Covenant is how Imu distributes their power. There are 3 tiers for subordinates and 1 for enemies, and each one drags the recipient deeper into Imu's grip. The Covenant system has a parallel to the Faustian bargain of European folklore, which is a deal with the devil where the price is always steeper than what was advertised. The marks branded onto the recipient's body evoke the concept of the devil's mark, an indelible brand believed to mark those who have sold their souls. Oda is being far from subtle when it comes to these contracts that Imu offers. The Shallows Covenant is the entry point. Devoted Blades of God receive it when they begin service. It marks them as part of the system, but doesn't grant them truly terrifying abilities. Someone carrying only the Shallows Covenant can still disobey Imu's will as long as they are physically away from Merijo. The compulsion only activates when in proximity to Imu. Shanks had exploited this exact loophole during Fisher Tiger's raid, using his position as a devoted blade to help free slaves while operating outside of the Holy Land's reach. The Depths Covenant is where everything changes. When a devoted blade proves themselves worthy, they are brought before the Empty Throne to meet Imu personally. Most devoted blades don't even know Imu exists until that point. Imu invokes the Depths Covenant directly onto the candidate's body. The process is accompanied by smoke emitting from the existing Shallows mark and pain on the recipient's part. With it comes superhuman strength, access to the abyss for instantaneous travel, telepathic communication with Imu, and immortality. The catch is total subservience. So it's more than just Imu physically controlling you, as they are now able to mentally corrupt you. The Depths Covenant actively warps the bearer's mind, installing a god complex and making them increasingly ruthless and cruel. The person you were before the Depths Covenant isn't the person you become after it. You keep your personality quirks, your surface level mannerisms, but your motives are rewritten. Obedience to Imu becomes the bedrock of every decision that you make. Imu is able to override a knight's personal will at any moment, regardless of distance. They are able to possess the knight's body outright, hijack their consciousness, and use them as a puppet. When possessing someone, Imu retains full access to their own abilities, including their demonic transformation, their haki, and their abyss abilities, while also gaining access to the abilities of the host. At God Valley, Imu used Saturn's mythical Zoan transformation while possessing him. They even manifested their own body from Saturn's back during the fight, rearing up above him as a massive silhouette with their crown and eyes taking shape from the Elder's body. There's an important vulnerability buried in the system. The Covenant mark itself can be damaged, and when it is, the individual briefly regains control of their own mind, at least until their immortality repairs the mark and the control reasserts itself. This is a brief window, but it's a window nonetheless, and it means that any fighter capable of targeting the mark with enough force could create an opening. Only 13 people can hold the Depths or Abyssal Covenants at any given time, which suggests that the system has hard limits on how much power Imu can distribute. The Abyssal Covenant is the 3rd tier, shared with the 5 Elders, though its specific details and distinctions from the Depths Covenant remain largely unrevealed. Then there is the Demon Covenant, Imu's weapon against enemies. Through a technique called Domi Reversi, Imu can transform any target into a demon against their will. Their target sinks into an abyss as Imu flips their hand and the person emerges with a demon's body, stripped of their personality and free will entirely. They gain immortal bodies and massively enhanced strength, which Imu calls the power of God. His opponents end up becoming mindless, violent monsters completely under the control of Imu. They can also activate Domi Reversi by stabbing the target with 2 black tendrils, as they did with rocks. If 2 demons stand on either side of a normal person, that person gets converted too. It spreads like a virus. The name Domi Reversi is a reference to the board game Reversi, where you flip pieces to your color by trapping them between your existing pieces. Nobody knows if there's a outright defense against this technique, but sufficient willpower can delay the transformation, and a massive massive concentration of Supreme King Haki is able to break it entirely. The cost of these covenants isn't one-sided. When Harold was killed despite his immortality, Imu was left breathing heavily and in visible pain. The death of a covenant bearer inflicts a cost on Imu as well, which is why they refuse to send more God Knights to Elbaf after the death of Harold. This brings us to Imu's history with rocks, which spans 2 encounters, and both are important for understanding who Imu is and what they fear. 56 years ago, during a reverie, Rocks kidnapped 5 kings and used them as leverage to infiltrate the Room of Flowers, the first and only person known to have done this. He'd killed a marine admiral on the way in, and Imu didn't react at all. Rocks menacingly declared his intention to return and left before Imu could say anything. At this point, Imu dismissed Rocks as a minor nuisance, but everything changed 38 years ago at God Valley. The native hunting competition was already underway as celestial dragons were slaughtering innocent civilians for sport. Garling had discovered the Davy family hiding on the island years earlier and recommended God Valley as the venue specifically to exterminate them. The Rocks Pirates and Roger Pirates had both crashed the event, and there was chaos on every front. But then Imu contacted Saturn telepathically to ask about Rocks' status. When Saturn admitted that he did not know if Rocks was dead but believed the destruction on the island would birth something entirely new, Imu was furious. They declared that they could not allow this to happen, and they made a decision to intervene personally. Imu descended on God Valley by possessing Saturn's body. Through Saturn, Imu attacked marines and pirates alike just for being in their vicinity before being confronted by Rocks. Imu addressed Rocks as Davy Jones, because when Imu learned that Rocks was a member of the Davy family, descendants of Davy D. Jones, the urgency became existential, as the situation was now about a bloodline that Imu had been trying to wipe out for 800 years. Rocks affirmed his intention of keeping a promise that his ancestor had made. Roger, Garp, Rocks, Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido, some of the most powerful combatants who ever lived, all attacked Imu at the same time. Supreme King Haki from every direction, and Imu reformed from the damage like it was nothing. Then Imu spotted something with their observation Haki, Eris, Rocks' wife, and an infant Marshal D. Teach fleeing through the forest. Imu's priority shifted immediately. The Davy bloodline had to be extinguished. Rocks cut Imu to pieces, trying to prevent them from reaching his family. Imu's response was to stab Rocks with 2 black tendrils and invoke Domi Reversi. The strongest pirate alive fought the transformation with everything that he had. Using his final moments of free will, Rocks taunted Imu. He claimed that Davy D. Jones had been the true king of the world. Imu snapped at this, furiously denying it, insisting that Jones was never a king for even a moment, and that Rocks had no right to speak about the fate that bound Imu and Davy together. Rocks pushed further, claiming Imu was afraid of both Davy Jones and Joy Boy. Imu turned this against him by mentioning their plans to subjugate Elbaf, deliberately provoking Rocks' anger over the giant's fate. They took this opportunity to complete the transformation over Rocks while he was distracted. Once Rocks was fully taken over, Imu issued a single order: kill your wife and son to end the Davy bloodline, then kill everyone else. The former captain of the most dangerous pirate crew in history was turned against his own family. Rocks defeated Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard in his demon form, and he nearly reached Eris and Teach, but a young Bartholomew Kuma used his devil fruit powers to teleport them off of the island at the last moment. Thankfully, Imu never saw this happen, as they assumed that the job was done. What happened next is one of the most emotionally devastating moments in the entire God Valley incident. Garp and Roger heard Rocks' voice in their head via the voice of all things, begging them to kill him. Rocks was still in there, trapped inside the demonic body, fully conscious of what he was being forced to do, and his only request was for death. Garp and Roger ordered their respective allies to leave them, then focused their remaining Supreme King Haki together into one devastating combined attack. The sheer mass of their Haki broke through the Demon Covenant entirely and critically injured Rox, reverting him to his normal state. After this, Garp, Rox, and Roger all collapsed from exhaustion. Rox regained his sanity. Garling and 2 other God Knights approached him. Relieved to be free, Rox silently thanked Roger and Garp before Garling dealt the killing blow. In his final moments, freed from Imu's control, Rox died with a smile, which is the hallmark of a D-Clan member. Imu departed God Valley on a government ship through Saturn as they ordered that God Valley be destroyed and declared that it never existed. The island was sunk and the records were wiped. CP6 and the G11 branch of the Marines handled the cover-up as they purged all geographical data, demographic data, and casualty numbers. The world was then told a heavily sanitized version of events where Garp was the hero and no one else mattered. This is a lie that Garp himself was furious about because it forced his life into a deception that he never wanted. There was a major witness to the God Valley incident that went largely unnoticed. He was a young Marine cadet named Monkey D. Dragon who saw the horrors of the native hunting competition firsthand, the celestial dragons slaughtering innocent civilians, the world government's complicity in every death. His exposure to what the world nobles were capable of led directly to his defection from the Marines, and eventually to the creation of the Revolutionary Army, the organization that is currently blockading Merijo and choking the Holy Land supply lines exists because of what Dragon saw at God Valley. Imu's atrocities planted the seeds for the revolutionary movement that is now threatening to burn the entire system down. After God Valley, Imu overheard King Harold of Elbaf pleading at Marineford for the opportunity to serve the world government. Harold had tore his own horns off in grief over Rox's death, a man who had been his friend, whose death Harold blamed himself for because he'd refused to help him. Harold wanted to atone for the giant's violent past, and he believed that partnership with the world government was the path forward. Harold spent 18 years serving the world government informally, destroying pirate ships in the Grand Line and following every directive. Then 20 years before the present day, the 5 elders formally inducted Harold as a devoted blade of God, granting him the Shallows Covenant. They explained that the tattoo has 3 levels, and they promised Harold that when the day came for his promotion to a full Knight of God, he would meet God personally, and that Elbaf would finally be eligible to join the world government. Garling told Harold that he couldn't tell anyone about his activity. 5 years into his devoted blade service, Shanks returned to Merijo and also became a devoted blade. But Shanks was different. He used his position to help Fisher Tiger free slaves during the famous raid on the Holy Land. Shanks had seen enough of the system from the inside in order to understand what full knighthood really meant. He desperately wanted to warn Harold not to accept the promotion, but he was too late. With Shanks gone, the original slot for knighthood was redirected to Harold instead. Harold graciously accepted because it meant that Elbaf would finally be cleared to join the world government, the dream he had sacrificed everything for. The 5 elders took Harold before the empty throne. He met Imu for the first time. Harold had just declared his intention to abdicate the throne of Elbaf, but Imu told him that they would decide that, as Imu invoked the Depths Covenant onto Harold's body. The elders watched and declared that Harold would now be an excellent weapon. The moment Harold placed an abyss portal in Orist Castle on Elbaf, Imu commanded him to round up his subjects into an army for the world government. Harold objected immediately. This wasn't what he'd agreed to. He wanted peace for his people, not to conscript them into Imu's war, but the Depths Covenant had already started its work on Harold's mind. The corruption was setting in. Harold realized what was happening, and in a desperate act he ordered his own guards to chain him to a pillar as he begged Loki and Jarl to come to the castle. He told the guards to kill him before Imu could use his body against the nation, which he'd spent his life trying to protect. Harold's newly acquired immortality made it impossible for him to die through normal means. He fought the Covenant off long enough to tell Loki the truth about everything, the world government's deception, Imu's existence, all of it. He told Loki that under the Depths Covenant he had been influenced to think of himself as some sort of god, and that the corruption wasn't just control, castle, it was a total rewriting of who he was at a fundamental level. And then Harold's personality vanished. He was replaced by something that attacked the very warriors who had come to save him. He ended up stabbing Jarl through the head. Loki then ate the legendary devil fruit and fought his own father. He managed to severely injure Harold, which temporarily damaged the Covenant mark on his body, and in that narrow window, with the mark compromised and his immortality struggling to repair it, the real Harold surfaced. He admitted there was no undoing what had happened. Loki weeping unleashed a massive Supreme King Haki infused lightning attack that shattered his father's body. Imu later revealed to the Gorosei that they never intended to let Elbaf join the world government. This was because of their connection to the D. Imu equated Elbaf directly with the Clan of D, a staggering declaration that brands an entire nation with the mark of Imu's ancient enemy. Harold's 18 years of service with his devoted blade position, the promise of knighthood and Elbaf's admission into the world government, all of it was a trap designed to enslave the giants. Imu concluded that Elbaf was completely incompatible with the world government and could never be safely incorporated. In the end, Rox was right about everything. The system was never going to accept Elbaf, no matter how much Harold had tried. During the Egghead Island arc, Joy Boy's stored Haki erupted from the ancient robot Emmet. This release of Haki forced the Gorosei back to Merijo as Imu fell to their knees screaming and cursing Joy Boy's name. The Haki that caused Imu physical pain was 800 years old, as the last time that they felt this presence was during the Void Century, and Imu's body remembered the pain. Whatever happened between Imu and Joy Boy during the Great War, the wound hasn't closed even after all of this time. Following the Egghead incident, Imu turned their fury on Saturn. Luffy had escaped. Vegapunk's broadcast had reached the world, revealing the world government's role in the Void Century and the truth about the rising sea levels. The secrets that Imu had spent centuries burying were now public knowledge, and Saturn, who had been on the ground at Egghead for the entire operation, had failed to prevent any of it. Imu stripped Saturn of his immortality and killed him. Saturn pleaded for mercy and Imu ignored every word. The process involved a dark, flame-like substance that engulfed Saturn's body, causing him to wither away until nothing remained but his skeleton and a resulting explosion. Imu did this despite Saturn being in a room full of Marine Vice Admirals at the time, meaning that these Marines witnessed a 5 Elder die at the hands of an unknown power. Vigilant Garling was promoted to fill Saturn's seat, inheriting the title of Warrior God of Science and Defense. The Elbaf arc was the first time that we've seen Imu take direct action in the present timeline. Their reasoning is for the suffering caused by the Revolutionary Army's blockade of Merijo, which meant that the giants had to be turned to the world government side immediately. The fears of a revived Great War were no longer a distant possibility. The world government believed that the victor of the next Great War will have the allegiance of Elbaf. Imu chose to specifically possess Gunko, their closest and most familiar subordinate. Additionally, Brook's arrival had stirred something within Gunko. He addressed her as Princess Shuri and revealed connections to her past, as these were memories that had been buried under decades of Covenant-controlled service. Gunko's emotional response momentarily cracked the Covenant's hold on her, and Imu seized control before she could break free entirely. With Imu in direct command, the invasion accelerated dramatically. They activated a limited version of their demonic form through Gunko's body. The wings, tail, and trident materialized, but her body didn't grow in size, and Imu floated in the air without moving the wings. They then unleashed Supreme King Haki that incapacitated giants across the island. Zoro, Sanji, Scopper Gaban, the new giant warrior pirates, all of them reacted with visible shock. Loki called it preposterous, as he doesn't scare easily. Imu confronted Dory and Broggy personally, summoning the Grimoire and ordering the 2 legendary captains to kill Jarl and declare themselves kings of Elbaf. When Broggy refused, Imu stabbed him with a summoned dagger, as they then invoked Domi Reversi. Both Dory and Broggy were converted into demons, and not too long after, their crewmates followed. Imu stood and watched as their freshly made puppets set off to destroy the nation from within. Imu declared their intention to shatter Elbaf's spirit, citing the failure of Harald's subjugation 14 years earlier as the reason that the giants weren't already under control. Everything happening on Elbaf is a direct continuation of the plot that fell apart when Loki killed his father. When Brooke brought up Gunko's apparent killing of her father, Imu's control was momentarily undone. Gunko broke through long enough to free Brooke and the other Straw Hats. Imu was outraged, reasserting control and furiously attacking Brooke while demanding to know what his relevance to Gunko was. The fact that a musician's presence could disrupt the Covenant's grip even briefly is deeply significant. The Covenant binds the body and corrupts the mind and the soul. The memories, feelings, connections that make a person who they are, those do still exist somewhere underneath their control. Imu is able to override someone's will and warp their personality, but they can't fully erase what's buried underneath, and that might be the crack that brings the whole system down. Meanwhile, Jarl himself picked up a Dangomushi and issued a direct challenge to Imu's invasion, declaring war on the world government and rallying all giants to fight back. For the first time in 800 years, someone is openly defying Imu's will on a national scale, with the full knowledge of what they are fighting against. Imu listened silently to Jarl's challenge. Elbaf isn't going to be as easy to break as Imu wants it to be. The grudges that Imu holds stretch back to the Void Century itself. Joyboy was the first pirate, an inhabitant of the Great Kingdom, and the original user of the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika. He led the faction that the allegiance of 20 kingdoms, including Imu, fought against during the Great War. The alliance of kingdoms won in the end, but the cost was the cataclysm that reshaped the planet's geography entirely. Imu was there for all of this. They witnessed the Great Kingdom's fall and saw Joyboy defeated, and they helped to build the world government from the ashes of the Great War. And they spent over 800 years making sure that the truth of what happened stays buried. But the will of Joyboy didn't die. It persisted through the centuries, through inherited wills and the D bloodline, until it manifested again in Monkey D. Luffy. Imu regards stopping Joyboy's return as the single most important priority in the world. Davy D. Jones is the other ghost that haunts Imu. The confrontation with Rocks at God Valley revealed just how raw this wound is. Imu raged about a fate binding them to Jones, a relationship whose true nature hasn't been revealed. Whatever promise connected the Davy bloodline to the world government's founding, it has driven an 800-year extermination campaign against the entire family line. Anyone belonging to the Davy bloodline, including women and children, are targeted for destruction across generations. This again was the main purpose of the native hunting competition, which was designed to purge the Davy bloodline. And then there's also the Nefertari family. Queen Lily was one of the first 20, but the only one who refused to move to Merijo. As the Cobra conversation revealed, her actions scattered the poneglyphs across the world, and in doing so, she arguably created the conditions for the entire pirate age. Roger deciphering the stones, finding the One Piece, sparking the Great Pirate era, it all traces back to what Lily did. Nefertari D. Lily carries the initial of the government's ancient enemy, actively sabotaging the regime that she helped to create. The portrait of Lily still hangs inside Pangaea Castle, despite Imu's contempt for her. They still kept it. Imu's obsession with Lily is consuming. Now Imu wants Vivi, Lily's descendant, a carrier of D, and we don't know what Imu intends for her, but the last Nefertari who crossed Imu's path ended up dead. For everything that we've come to learn about Imu so far, there's still so much that Oda is holding back. We don't know the full nature of Imu's transformation, whether if it's a devil fruit or something granted by the Void Century's advanced technology, or it could be an entirely new source of power that we're not familiar with. We don't know the complete story of the giant straw hat in the frozen chamber. We don't know what completing the world actually means to Imu. We have no idea the full terms of the Abyssal Covenant or what separates it from the Depths Covenant in practice. And we don't know the true nature between Imu and Davy D. Jones beyond the fragments that Rocks forced out of them. What we do know is that Imu's secrecy is eroding. Sabo, the Revolutionary Army, Wapol, they all know and they've likely told others. Vegapunk's broadcast exposed the Void Century's secrets to the entire world. The very foundations that Imu has spent the last 800 years building are cracking, and for the first time in the history of One Piece, the shadow on the empty throne is being dragged into the light. There's also the question of how Imu can actually be defeated. Scopa told Luffy directly that the God Knights are not truly immortal, and the story has already answered how. Across God Valley, Egghead, and Elbaf, we witness Supreme King Haki bypass regeneration, as it's able to disrupt abyss travel and shatter the Demon Covenant outright. If the source of Imu's own immortality really is the Obi Opi no Mi's perennial youth operation, then Law's Fruit might be uniquely positioned to counter the foundation of Imu's power. Now that they have Mother Flame and an ancient weapon in their possession, Imu is more dangerous than ever. So when the final war of One Piece begins, Imu won't be fighting from the shadows anymore. They'll be out in the open against a world that is waking up to who they are and what they've done. But yeah, we've now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about Imu? What aspect of their character fascinates you the most? And what do you think of Ivankov's Neurona Imu theory? I'm looking forward to seeing what plot twist Oda throws at us and what exactly Imu wants with Vivi. If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this one, and I look forward to seeing you in my next One Piece video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.